As I mentioned in the previous tutorial, the audio editor is mainly used for destructive treatments and broad processes. And a lot of that has to do with whether you make a selection on the waveform or you just leave it alone. Because making a selection is going to target a certain region of the audio file to apply a particular edit or process. For example, right now I haven't made a selection on this particular audio file, so if I were to apply any of the processes found under the process menu, like changing the gain, let's just go ahead and knock this down about 5 dB and click the apply button, you'll notice that it applies that process across the entire audio file because I have not made a selection. But I'm going to type Control-Command-Z to undo. But then now if I make a selection to this audio file, then I'm actually defining the region within the audio file where that process is going to be applied. For example, if I wanted to change the level of this region of the audio file, then I'm going to call up this preset of, let's go with -6 dB, and then click the apply button. You'll see that only the area inside of that selection has been processed. And I'm going to undo that process. So another way to look at this is if you make a selection, you're defining the region where you want to edit. However, if you wanted to apply processing to the entire file, then you can either make no selection whatsoever or type Control-Command-A to do a select all to make a selection around the entirety of the audio file. So let's talk about different ways to make selections. I've already shown you one way, which is to click and drag across the audio file. And you can also make selections in the overview if you hold down the Control or Command key. For example, if you wanted to make a selection around this region, if you hold down Control or Command and then click and drag across the overview, you'll see that there's a corresponding selection being made in the waveform display. And another way to do it is to move the cursor to the beginning point where you want your selection, then move your pointer, but hold down the Shift key and click on the waveform, and that will define the beginning and ending of the selection. And another really helpful keyboard shortcut for making selections around the beginning and end of an audio file are by moving the cursor position, then holding down the Shift key and typing Home. That will make a selection from the cursor position all the way to the beginning of the audio file. That's really useful for applying fades. So for example, if we just wanted to throw in a fast fade in on that file, we've made a selection first and then applied the fade. Conversely, if we wanted to make a fade out at the end of the audio file, I'm going to move my cursor position, then hold down Shift and type End. It's going to select from the cursor to the end of the audio file. Then I'm going to go back to Process and click on Fade Out, and that applies a fade out to the audio file. And just like when you're playing back in the audio editor, the position of your mouse pointer is going to have a lot to do with whether you're selecting both the left and right channels if you're editing with a stereo file like this, or if you're only going to apply the edit to the left or right channel information. So if I click and drag here kind of in the center between those two audio waveforms representing the left and the right channel audio information, then it's going to select both simultaneously, and therefore any edits will be applied to both channels simultaneously. However, if I wanted to apply a process to just the left channel audio information, I'm going to make my selection from the region above its waveform. So if I click and drag here, you'll notice that only the left channel is being selected, and it's kind of the mirror image to make right channel selections. So instead of clicking here, which would be selecting both the left and right channels, I'm going to move my mouse pointer below the right channel, and then when I click and drag, I'm only selecting the right channel. And now that you know how to make selections, let's move on to the Edit menu.